Initiating podcast download. Prepare yourself. Put on your spandex. Lace up your boots. Wrap your wrists. Hide your razor blade. Head to gorilla position. Grease up your hair. Apply baby oil. Okay, apply more baby oil. Get into gimmick. Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Have fun and be safe out there, brother. Welcome to Iron on Wrestling. Now your host, Gregory Iron.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Iron on Wrestling with Gregory Iron. I'm your host, Gregory Iron, and this is episode 275, Staying Alive. And I'm happy to be alive, and I hope you're happy to be alive wherever you are. And thanks for tuning in again this week. I won't be interrupted because there is no Aaron Bauer in the building. That's because we usually record on Monday nights, but because I'm having my very first surgery tomorrow morning, I decided to do this on my day off on a Sunday, get it in the can, because I don't know how I'm going to be feeling tomorrow. If I'm feeling okay, maybe you already know if you're listening to this on Wednesday for free on iTunes or wherever you download podcasts, or perhaps maybe on YouTube, you might know that I've posted some stuff about bonus content that involves Aaron, but if not, I may have posted bonus content by myself. I don't know, or maybe I tragically passed away. I don't know. Listen, I don't know what to expect out of this. Having this surgery for a lump in my back that's gotten progressively bigger and a little bothersome, and I know they want to cut it out, send it out for a biopsy, though, I am a little bit concerned because they sent me day before surgery. Again, this is Sunday and the surgery is on a Monday, January 6th, coincidentally the debut of Raw on Netflix. They sent me a prepay statement of like $4,000, which, I don't know what your financial situation is, but when it kind of gets dropped on you the day before you're having a surgery that they would like $4,000. I'm a normal person, and I just can't pull $4,000 out of my asshole, and I won't. So maybe I didn't even get the surgery, and maybe this lump is just going to get even bigger. But people are messaging me and telling me that they usually set up a payment plan, and that sort of makes sense. I don't know what to expect. I've never had a surgery on anything, not even like anything for dental work. So they're going to be putting me under. I'm hoping I'm not saying anything weird to my girlfriend when I wake up. And, is it normal to avoid surgery for 38 years? Because I tried to Google it and I couldn't seem to find anything. Anyways, that's enough about me. I'm hoping everything goes okay. I hope everything's okay in your world. And I hope you're ready for Raw on Netflix. If, you're listening on Patreon already, you know that this is up before Raw on Netflix. But if it's Wednesday, Raw already happened, and I'm sure it was a great show, but we are going to have a bonus episode about the debut of Raw on Netflix. No matter what, patreon.com/Iron on Wrestling with a buttload of bonus content. We're also going to be doing a Q&A episode, a special bonus on there this week, and so lots of things to look forward to on Patreon. I'm getting back on the wagon with making new YouTube videos, so Patreon will be seeing those first and foremost. Sometimes you'll get the rough copy. Sometimes you'll get the rough copy and the edited version before it hits YouTube. So there's a lot of good reasons to be on Patreon. And of course, sometime in the next few weeks, if you're a part of the $25 and up Animal Steel package, you'll be getting your Christmas package a little late, but you'll be getting it before the end of January. And you've got something to look forward to because you'll be getting another package in March. Wow, 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 wow. It's good stuff. $3 gets you in the door on Patreon. $5 gets you the video on top of the audio. $9 gets you involved in the private chat, the live chat that we do. You get at least an hour of my time. It happens once a month. We'll be doing that sometime in the month of January. And it's always a pleasure to talk to not just my Patreon members, but my family, my friends, because that's what you guys have become. You guys do more for me than you will ever know. Words can't express what you mean to me. And who knew when we started this what kind of great community, not just for professional wrestling, but for life that we've created. So if you want to be part of something special, patreon.com/Iron on Wrestling. This week, part 1 of 2, we have a very special interview with a guy that means a lot to my life. He means a lot to a lot of the lives, a lot of fans out there, and he's helped create some of the best professional wrestling matches you've ever seen. Perhaps maybe a lot that you haven't seen you should look into. He has helped create and influence a lot of the superstars that you see on your television screen today. In fact, he just got name dropped this week on the most recent episode of WWE SmackDown during the DIY Motor City Machine Guns match. I'm talking about the one, the only, the legendary Josh Prohibition. Josh played a part in my formative years as a professional wrestling. He helped my training, and he was always a mentor and a friend, and he still is. And, this was something that Aaron set up, but then he didn't show up for the interview. I guess Aaron's been having some back issues, so hopefully Aaron gets better soon. But in general, I'm glad that he set up this talk with Josh. It had been too long since I saw him. We had a delicious pork chop dinner. It was me, Josh, and his wife. We did a lot of catching up, and we recorded 2 hours of the 6 or so hours that we spent together. And man, I miss that guy so much. And in these 2 parts, we talked a lot about life. We talked about his formative years getting into professional wrestling, his days as a backyarder, the final match that he had with M-Dog Matt Cross this past May at Absolute Intense Wrestling, some of his legendary feuds up in Canada when he was working UWA Hardcore, learning from guys like Tracy Smothers, Jerry Lynn, Chris Hamrick, and I'm biased. I think it's one of the best interviews we've ever done, and it's one of the first interviews we've done in a while, so I think it's going to be something special. In this first part of 2 parts, the thing that really stands out to me and the thing that I want you guys to really carry with you into episode 2, because it's a good cliffhanger, is, every person that falls in love with wrestling, whether you're a fan or a wrestler, there's something that draws you to it. And it's not the case with everybody. But I think particularly when you end up deciding to go down the path of being a professional wrestler, more often than not, something happens to us in our lives, usually for the worst, that makes us want to become a wrestler, that pushes us towards this crazy thing that we do. And maybe long term and in hindsight, we look back at it and go, even though that wasn't great in that moment, I'm glad that happened because it made me the person that I am, and I probably wouldn't be a performer. I wouldn't be a pro wrestler if it wasn't for that. Josh has one of those stories that we get to at the end of the show with him, at the end of this first part of the interview, something I had no idea about, and it's crazy, it's tragic, it was emotional. Josh almost got emotional talking about it. I almost lost it just listening to it, and it's something you're going to want to listen to. So I'm looking forward to bringing you both parts of this interview. If you want to listen to the whole thing, it's actually available right now at patreon.com/Iron Wrestling. Like I said, $3 gets you bonus content going all the way back to 2019, extended episodes. These episodes drop early if you're on Patreon, and you have access to hundreds and hundreds of bonus episodes. So if you want to listen to the whole thing, you can't wait another week for part 2. It's all up on Patreon. I would answer some questions right now, but that's what I'm doing a separate episode for. I might even drop a portion of that for free on iTunes or wherever you download podcasts, just so you can get a little tasty taste of what we're doing over behind the paywall. But in general, hey, I appreciate all your guys' support, and I don't know. I hope your new year is starting out right. I guess technically this is our second show of the new year. Technically, we recorded the last one in 2024, but now we're in 2025, and I've got a feeling it's going to be a good year. Do you guys have goals for the new year? I know I do. I want to keep working on this book that I've been doing forever and forever and ever. I want to perhaps maybe look into some people helping me with some projects beyond wrestling. I want to finish some rooms in my home. But one of my most important things on my agenda for 2025 is getting back on track health-wise. I hurt my shoulder in the beginning of November wrestling, which it's my labrum that's been hurting me for a long, long time. I had to tough it out through the whole month because I had 2 to 3 shows a weekend, every weekend for that month. And I haven't worked out since the last weekend of November. I'm hoping after the surgery, knock on wood, and these stitches come out on the 17th, I'll be back working out on January 18th. That being said, one of the things that has been helping me mentally is my support from Mike and TNT Health during my time down. Mike and the good folks at TNT-health.com have been supplying me with not just good vibes, but good supplies for my strength and conditioning, for my health and wellness, for my overall nutrition. I got the creatine from TNT Health. I got the glutamine for post-workout, which, I haven't been using the glutamine. There's really no point for it. But yeah, I mean, a little bit because I've been doing shoulder exercises for physical therapy. So even with that, it's been helping me with the recovery. The protein, the organic vanilla protein, which you can mix with anything. A little bit of water is fine, and it'll be great for you. But actually, it mixes quite well if you put a little bit into one of those little bullet mixers. I throw in a little bit of cereal with it, and it's chef's kiss, okay? There's a bunch of stuff that you can invest in at TNT-health.com. But if you're a novice on your health and wellness, I'm sorry, I can't even talk. If you're a novice on your health and wellness journey, no need to worry. You don't got to buy a bunch of supplements. Mike just wants you to get started on a couple things, and he's going to not only point you in the right direction to a couple things that's going to set you straight, he's going to help you with your macros, your overall nutrition. He's going to check in on you, make sure you're doing what you got to do. And also, if you slip a little bit, it's okay, because Mike only wants 70 to 80% of the results because he knows no one's perfect. You're going to want cheat meals. You're going to, go out on the spur of a moment, maybe go out to dinner with a friend, celebrate something, whatever the case may be. He knows that you'll get right back on track, and he's going to hold you accountable. That's far beyond what anybody's going to do for you at Vitamin Shop or GNC. Mike and TNT Health is the place to be. So it's free to check out, TNT-health.com. Look it over, see what you like, send some messages to Mike. I didn't mean to rhyme, but I did. And if you want to buy anything, you can save 10% on anything and everything just by using our promo code IRONON. That's IRONON, IRONON. Save 10% and get yourself started on your health and wellness journey for 2025, or keep your health and wellness journey going. Do it now or else. I will do nothing, but I will be very, very upset. TNT-health.com, because at TNT Health, it's about your health today, not tomorrow. Here's a spoiler for you. One of the reasons why the Patreon package is so far behind is because I reached out to a good buddy to help me with something pretty special for the December Patreon package, because what I originally had fell through. That good buddy, Juan Ortiz and Of the Dead Designs. Why would I reach out to a good buddy like Juan? Well, when it comes to making a design, he has nearly 20 years of experience within the industry. Also, not only do I know his designs are great because I've gotten a plethora of designs for him in the past, but also he's made designs, artwork, t-shirts, logos, just merch in general for some of the most incredible talents within professional wrestling. Major champions for all major promotions, like we're talking WWE, AEW, TNA, New Japan Pro Wrestling, MLW. Do you know Cody Rhodes? He's made merch for him. Do you know Seth Rollins? He's made merch for him. Do you know The Undertaker? He's like the guy who pretends to be dead, but now he does like a podcast and he like loves Donald Trump and stuff, which is a weird, stark contrast from a dead guy. He's done merch for him. He's done merch for so many individuals that you watch every single week, and he also can do work for you. And he's not charging that much. His prices are incredibly affordable compared to the industry standards because he wants to make sure that his art is being spread around the globe and even beyond to the highest of heights, like heaven on clouds, if you were to have fishing poles and be sitting on a couch with an alpaca. And I'm not spoiling anything. All I'm saying is you need to do yourself a favor. If you need artwork, reach out to Juan Ortiz and Of the Dead Designs. Mention Iron on Wrestling, because on your first design, you will save $20. What? I said $20, brother or sister, but I'm pretty positive that our female listener percentage is fairly low. Anyhow, reach out to Juan and Of the Dead Designs right now. You can contact them on Instagram at Of the Dead Designs. Facebook is also an option, facebook.com/Of the Dead Designs, or go to their website, ofthedead.weebly.com, because Of the Dead Designs is bringing artwork to life. Now that we paid the bills, hey, it's time to listen to the interview. Probo, Josh Prohibition, legendary performer, an all-time great, 25 years within this business, making everybody that he comes into contact with and that he works with a better person and or wrestler. He's one of a kind, and we're going to go to the first part of our two-part interview with him right here, right now, in front of all you people. Enjoy. Currently sitting in the smoking room.
Smoking room, even though I've never smoked.
The smoking room of one Josh Prohibition, a legend.
In some incredibly small, angry circles.
Angry circles. I don't know about that, because you know what? Listen, I still go to Canada quite often, and you are still looked upon as like the guy for many people that went to those old UWA hardcore shows. And so like the two names that I always hear as far as like Canadian legends there that aren't Bret Hart or Lance Storm,
Yeah.
they talk very highly about Eric Young, and they talk very highly about you.
Wow.
Your thoughts?
So UWA Hardcore was one of those promotions that was fairly short-lived, but as far as the amount of talent and quality of shows that they put on was pretty incredible. It was two brothers, the McCausland brothers, and they brought M-Dog Matt Cross in first, and Matt called me, and I was actually doing a show for Super Danny for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, so he was in Canada, and he called me, and I was out in California doing a show, and he's like, you got to come up to Toronto. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what, you know, and at that time, indie wrestling was down. Like, it was down everywhere. Getting 200 people was like a good night at that point. You know, that was like a great night. You know, most likely you're seeing 75. He said there was like 400 to 500 people up there, and they were out of their minds. And he said it was like ECW arena style, you know, energy. And he's like, you got to come up here. And so I negotiated a price, and I think the promoter gave me more than I asked for, which I think was the first time ever.
Yeah. That's always nice when that happens.
Yeah, it was like he basically said, you're worth more than that. And I was like, well, my self-esteem's through the roof now.
Yeah.
You know, so that right there, in some ways, is good business sense, because it's like, if this guy's willing to pay me more than I even asked for, like, the quality of work that I'm going to try to provide him is going to be the absolute best I can possibly do. You know, like, I always worked hard, but it's like, you know, now it's like there's this added incentive to like go as hard as you can and do the best that you can. So anyway, when I got up there, Matt was right. It was just this rabid fan base that I felt like, I don't know, I had been kind of insulated from the negativity smart mark kind of vibe that took over indie wrestling. And they were fans, you know, they wanted to boo the heels and they wanted to cheer the baby faces, and nobody was trying to be cool. So it felt like wrestling the way that it was supposed to be. And so they brought me up there, and on the first night I wrestled my first match, and the crowd gave me a great reception, and I wrestled as a face, and I won my match, got a great reaction from the crowd. And later that night I came back out, and I jumped. I'm going to forget who I jumped. I jumped somebody, probably Matt, probably him dog.
Sure.
And cut a real mean promo, kind of telling him, like, screw your hospitality. I don't care. Like, I was just in it for the money. Like, thanks for your money, sucker. Like did the classic heel promo. And they started bringing me back at least once, if not twice a month for 3 to 4 years. And they allowed me to be the top heel in that company. And I look back on some of those cards, and I still have some of the DVDs, and the names on those cards. I mean, it's Okada and Seth Rollins and Kevin Steen and El Generico, Sami Zayn and Claudio, and
yeah.
I mean, it is everybody. And I'm at the top of this card with no place at the top. I'm looking down. I'm like, every single guy that wrestled before me tonight should probably be in the spot that I'm in. But kind of something we were having a conversation about earlier tonight over dinner was, it's the guys that can talk a little bit. That's what's going to get the fans riled up, and they're going to sell tickets. And anyway, I was the top heel for a long time up there, and I made it a point to never, ever break character. So I would arrive before any fan got there. I would never go out. A couple times fans tried to come through the curtain in the back to get an autograph, and I flipped out like I was actually going to try to fight him. And I'm like looking for the first person next to me. I'm like, grab me. Like,
yeah.
If you don't grab me, I got to go hit this fan, So I never signed a single autograph up there, never took a single picture, never sold a single piece of merch.
Wow.
And I did it. Like, and it was a great experiment too, because, you hear guys talking about like it doesn't matter anymore. You can go out and be a heel and still go out and sell merch and take pictures. But like, I felt like there was genuine disdain and hatred for me, because I think they thought it was legit, he really hated us, and because he never broke it and he never stopped. Like, we would do press conferences, before shows. They would have these, cool press conferences that they would do, and I would always get riled up, and it was just such a cool atmosphere. And I think for me that was probably my best heel work. And I got to step in the ring with everybody. If you name somebody that's on TV right now, they put me in the ring with those people, and had an amazing feud up there with Jerry Lynn and, Generico and all those guys. And it was just such a cool opportunity. I really feel like they gave me the ball. I did a decent job with it. And as a wrestler, I grew and learned an incredible amount. And at the same time, just had a riot, because like I said, it was wrestling the way that it should be.
What was the inspiration for you not wanting to break character? Was it just the fact that at that point everybody was just kind of starting to do it, like they want to make their merch money and everything?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have ride-alongs like Tracy Smothers, and Jerry Lynn, and I was in the car with these guys, and especially Smothers, who had seen what wrestling was during the territory days and knew what it was like. And he would tell his stories about how, the heels and babies would never even get in the same car together.
Sure.
They'd never be seen dead together at the same bar. Like, that just didn't happen. And he also talked about how, obviously you've heard all the stories about people getting stabbed and, people waiting outside with bats waiting for you when you're coming through the...
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I want that. Like, I want to get stabbed. Like, I want somebody to be that mad at me, like that angry that they would be willing to try to do physical violence. So I'm like, I want to push it to that point to see if you could still get it. And never had anybody stab me up there, but I got punched a number of times, by the guardrail, which I felt was like a victory, that they were that angry that they're going to get kicked out of this show just to take a swing at me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, so I guess I was trying to experiment a bit with, like, could it still work? And like I said, it didn't get taken to the point that I was worried for my life, but some of those idiots did take swings at me, which was just like such a cool, like, I got them, like they're really, really, really angry at me.
This goes back to, before we started recording the show tonight, when we were talking to your wife, and you basically said that you have to have a little bit of a screw loose to be a professional wrestler. And like everything you're saying, I totally relate to, because when I started doing heel stuff at AIW, where they didn't know what else to do with me, they weren't even sure that I could do it. But in my brain, I was like, you know what? this despite having disability? What's your excuse and all this? And I had that same mindset of like, if I'm going to have them buy into this, because I already knew that I was going to have things working against me wrestling like a bad guy.
Yeah.
I needed to make them think when Greg Iron leaves this building, like, he is disabled, but I think he's kind of a piece of shit, actually. And so I was always mean. I was always in character. Yeah. And I think I created that emotional investment.
Yeah, for sure. And, back to the other thing that we mentioned is, like, the ability to talk, which you've always had. And I felt like, when you were a heel, you found your voice as a heel really quickly. It didn't seem like to take a long time for you to kind of figure out what that looked like.
I'm a natural smartass. That's part of the problem.
And most people that have listened to your podcast or seen anything know that you were kind of born with a chip on your shoulder because you were given incredibly difficult circumstances, and it sounded like high school was rough for you in a lot of ways, and it's in some ways probably cathartic to be able to act as the bully. Because I think most people in their life have been bullied. I was actually the youngest kid in my class, so especially before I hit puberty, there were some bullies, that would hurt you. And, I think, you know what it feels like to be bullied, and it's like it's not too far of a turn to kind of turn that around and, figure out, okay, what didn't I like the way that I was treated as a kid? And like, okay, I'm going to do it to these guys because I know how it feels, and it's not good.
Yeah.
So I think you could definitely take those real life experiences, often negative, and say, okay, like, I'm going to use this and kind of channel some of those same feelings and emotions that, you wrestled with at some point in your life. And, those often are more painful or, just scary or whatever they are. And it's like, okay, if I can channel that, because they definitely left their mark in my brain, like I can use that to try to, instigate somebody else and anger them. And, so, yeah, and there's something, like I said, it's almost cathartic. I unfortunately, as I got further and further in my wrestling career, I think out of sympathy and nostalgia, I started, kind of becoming a face wherever I went, which I didn't necessarily like because I feel like you got to wrestle harder.
Yeah.
And I don't have a natural fire like that baby face fire that, the old school, Bobby Eaton, Ricky Morton. Like I never really had that. So it was harder and harder as I moved into my later years because I'm getting cheered all the time, and it's it's harder. I have to work harder, and I just feel like weird. Like, come on, like
right. But you hold on. And you've always been great at promos. You've always been great at psychology, and I want to go back to the promo thing. But tell me if I'm right or wrong with this. So as I've gotten older in wrestling, and the way that I try to teach seminars is I feel as a wrestling character.
Yeah.
We build layers to who we are as we progress, through every interaction we have with another wrestler, either on camera or behind the scenes, working with someone else. When we leave that match, that relationship, that story, you walk away, and whether it was negative or positive, it builds a layer to who you are. And you could take that to, once you bring some element out of yourself that you otherwise didn't know you could in that particular situation, you could take that and do it babyface, heel. I feel like being a heel and being able to talk trash when I would go back as a babyface, I understood how to give Greg Iron the babyface an edge to where you just don't become a babyface again, and then you're like, come on, let's go. There's still this snarky, smart ass attitude that you can have, but you flip it. And I think wrestling, the best way to teach is just explain to people that wrestling is life. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with any bad or good relationship. Once you leave it, it affects you in some profound way, and you carry that with you, and it shapes who you are. So I feel like as a baby face, I think you're just kind of overthinking here because you're a great baby face, and your promos have reflected that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think what you were saying is right. I mean, I wasn't doing the full old school 1980s baby face. Kind of,
come on, baby.
Yeah. But I know what you're saying about it. All characters now are more shade of gray. There's not really definitive, good, definitive bad often anymore. But I know what you're saying. But it just felt, I guess, less natural to be a babyface and just being a heel. And I'm glad my last match I was able to go out as a heel, even though the fans were cheering way more than I wanted them to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was just more natural for me. It felt better. You know, I always loved just getting heat, and it was just so fun, you know. And also, like I said, you have to be, in my opinion, you have to be a little less snazzy with your moves. You can be more club stomp, you know, boot, club stomp, boot, and you know, and at that point, that type of wrestling is less tiring. So, like, I feel like then I could be more invested with what I'm doing with the crowd by being a heel and talking trash and, you know, making fun of the guy in the first row. Yeah. You know, when I'm flying around trying to do cool moves with some kid that's legit 24 years younger than me, you know, like, that's hard because, I mean, I'm breathing, I'm huffing, I'm puffing, and it's harder when you're blown up like that to have that connection with the crowd that, you know, helps, you know, differentiate you from just every other guy that can do the moves, you know.
Yeah. As you've gotten older and towards the end when you're working with these younger kids, I'm sure you taught them a lot, but is there something that you learned from them? Because you better take this the right way. I look at you as Tracy, you know what I mean? Like for the younger generation, for like when I was coming up, like I feel like you're one of those guys that like Tracy was, where even though he came from almost a bygone era, it didn't matter how young or how old you were, you respected Tracy, and Tracy was able to tweak his game and adapt with the times, and I feel like you were always the same way.
Yeah. So number one, thank you for the compliment. Like, I hold Tracy Smothers in the highest esteem, you know, as far as his impact on me and wrestling in general. And, you know, I feel like I did, you know, probably 50th of what Tracy accomplished with just about every major promotion in the world, you know. But I get what you're saying, and I guess trying to stay kind of up to date, I guess you'd say, on the style of wrestling, because wrestling's always been evolving. And in, you know, the 25 years that I started, it evolved dramatically. I was just having that conversation with Matt Cross the other day about, you know, some of the differences from when we started versus now, and just, you know, technical things that have changed pretty dramatically. But anyway, I've tried to stay up to date on kind of the style, but kind of keeping, you know, the old school psychology, you know, like the idea of a story. Because, like, so for example, like, I started training this young kid, Tyler Jordan, who I wrestled a series of matches before, right before my final match. And heading into that last year, I kind of knew it was going to be it for me, like that it was going to be my final year. And initially, you know, having talked to John Thorne, the promoter of AIW, I was kind of pitching like dream opponents. You know, I was going to try to wrestle like Alex Shelley and guys that I've had amazing feuds with and matches with. And I was like, I just wanted like one more chance with them. And anyway, this young man, Tyler Jordan, from the very first class that he stepped in the ring, his level of respect, love of wrestling, just pedigree. Kid was, you know, D1 wrestler in college, and just his desire to learn. Like, he was like a sponge, and he wanted to learn so much that I asked to be his debut match, his first match ever, and it turned into almost like a 7 to 8 month feud. And I gave up on my like dream series of opponents. And I'm like, I just want to wrestle this kid to the end and then wrestle like one more against Matt. And I don't know, like there's something satisfying in that. Like I think he learned a lot, and his level of appreciation, the way he vocalized it, meant so much, you know, to have him, you know, just be so thankful and just asking so many questions and so interested that, you know, for me, that's like a way for me in a small way to continue on wrestling, even though I'm not in the ring as a competitor. It's like, now I've invested in this kid and I see parts of me in the way that he wrestles. And, you know, that's just a cool way to kind of pass it forward and just kind of keep it going, you know, and hopefully, you know, I'm watching him on TV in 5 years.
Well, you know, it's, I think as I've gotten older, I've learned that it's better to give than to receive. And I think what you're saying is, you know, it's that teacher in you, right? I mean, like, you're a teacher in real life, but you've always trained guys. You know, you helped train me when I started. And, you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even be around, because going back to that chip on my shoulder, it was a pretty hefty sized chip. And now there's crumbs there still sometimes, but you helped clean that up quite a bit. And I just think that I know that I get more fulfillment now in seeing that spark in someone's eye, because I've always, I wouldn't say always, but as I've grown and learned myself better, I feel like I'm a better wrestling mind than a wrestling body, and I had to be because of my disability. And so if I can tell someone something psychologically, show them a little transition that they end up using in a match, or an idea for a character, and you see that spark in their eyes, like there's something almost better than just the physical act of wrestling.
Yeah, I would say it's like, not to the same extent, but very similar to, I'm a dad and I got 2 daughters, and when you teach them something and you see them do it and you see them do it successfully, there's just such a pride. And in a way, it's like they're kind of like your wrestling kids, the guys that you train and you guys that you work with. And like when you see them have a great match or do something incredibly successfully, there's such a joy. Like I was just thinking about it the other day. I was so 2 guys that were definitely busting their butts at the wrestling school when I was at the AIW school I usually do like 6 to 7 month sessions, and then I take 6 months off and I do it again. But PME, Philly and Marino, they, for a couple of years, they were there every time and they were working hard and they were always running the drills and they were willing to go twice if there was an odd number of people, and just great attitudes, and they were always super respectful and appreciative. So like, again, 2 guys that I was really willing to invest in. And they were wrestling Bear Country. Yeah, so they were wrestling it was big boys.
Yep.
They were wrestling Bear Country at AIW, and they had this finish where like the one Bear Country guy had Marino up on his shoulders. I'm sorry, switch that. I think they had Philly up on the shoulders. But anyway, some crazy spectacular move, and Philly does this crazy crossbody and knocks this Bear Country guy. They both spill to the floor for the finish, and it was just like as a guy that worked with these guys, there was such joy, because they did it. Like that was probably a better finish than I've ever had in a tag match. Like, and they nailed it, So it's like I was just happy for them, and I think that's such a satisfying thing when you have the opportunity to see people you invest in successful. And I was, again, we were having a very similar conversation at dinner. Like I take joy in seeing guys like Johnny and Ray and all these guys that have been part of our stories, making it. Like I love it, and it's like I like to be able to say, like, I know that guy, I like that, and I just like seeing them successful, and and I think a lot of these guys are good people too, so it's like I want the best for them. I want them to to go as far as they can.
I feel like when you're in your 20s, not every person wants to share success or give away, I guess, for lack of a better term, the secrets to like how they're making it. You and M-Dog, you guys were doing a lot at a very young age. So when you go back and you think about taking Ray Rowe on the road or taking Johnny under your wing, what was it in you as a 20-something-year-old kid that wanted to share that success?
I think, number one, I only want to invest in people that I think are decent people. Like, if you're a scumbag, like, I'm not going to take the time with you, and usually that comes to the surface pretty quick. You can hide it for a while, but it's like you start to realize who the scumbags are. Like, I'm not going to invest in them. I'll pull back. But guys that are good dudes, it's like, number one, I want to help good people. I was helped a lot. I mentioned Brodie Smothers and Jerry Lynn and Chris Hamrick and, guys like that were willing to invest in me. But, I see a common love of pro wrestling. Obviously that's always so much of the common denominator from people from different backgrounds and, races and genders. And, wrestling is that glue that holds us together. But I think, come from a kind of a punk rock mindset. I've always been heavily involved in the punk rock scene, even though I'm a government teacher now,
Sure,
like
yeah.
living in an affluent suburb, but I still have that kind of ethos, where it's like, I don't know, I want us all to be successful. I want to help people, just like little things, like when I was, playing in a very short-lived band, just like when somebody would say, hey, do you want to crash on my floor so I don't have to sleep in my car? Like those little things matter. So it's like, I want to help people that are good people that shared the love of wrestling, that were, guys that I'd like to be in a car with, that are going to make me laugh or entertain me or, I don't know. I think it's just a genuine desire to help people. And, and I know there's so many like men in my life that were mentors, and like think of the positive impact that those guys had on me. And it's like, I'd be a real, I don't know, in some ways like a selfish a-hole if I wasn't willing to say like, I it's almost a duty, but it's not a duty that's like, oh, I got to do this. It's like I take joy in it,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like I have to, but in a good way.
What did you learn from Jerry Lynn that helped shape you as a wrestler?
Oh man, so
Because he's one of the best of all time.
Oh yeah. So we were wrestling in probably Paynesville because it was NEPW run by Eddie Edwards. Not that Eddie Edwards, the guy Eddie Edwards you've never heard of.
Yeah.
So he was running NEPW, and we were on a show on a Friday, and the next day Matt and I were making our debut at the ECW arena for Combat Zone Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And on the NEPW show in Cleveland or Paynesville or wherever it was on the Friday, Jerry Lynn was on the show. And at the end of the show, Eddie Edwards came up to us and said, guys, I'm sorry to ask you this, but would you be able to drive Jerry to Philadelphia? He's like, I can't afford a rental car, whatever the deal was supposed to be. He's like, I'll pay you guys some money. It was less than the rental car. And, in my head, I'm like, would I drive Jerry?
Right,
I'm like,
yeah.
I'll do you the favor, Eddie.
Mm. Yeah.
So Jerry gets in the car, and me and you were talking about Steve Austin being a genuine dude. He's a dude.
Yeah.
Like Jerry Lynn right away was a dude. Like right away you can tell he wasn't like some of those other ECW guys. Well, I'm not going to name names, but they're jerks. But he was the guy, and one of those like kind of core memories for me now was we were on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, probably about 4 hours into the ride, and basically in the middle of the night at this point, and we're kind of starting to kind of come down a little bit. So I think, I don't know, I turned on the radio or Matt turned on the radio, but it was a song by a band that we liked called Social Distortion. Story of My Life was the name of the song, and it starts playing, and Jerry just starts singing the lyrics like at the top of his lungs. And I was like, number one, he knows this song. Like, I don't know. I just didn't expect him to know some obscure punk rock song,
Yeah.
So next thing I know, I'm like, I'm singing too. This. So like I'm singing, Matt starts singing, Jerry Lynn starts singing, and we're singing it. It's loud. And, I'm on the Pennsylvania Turnpike with a guy that was one of the reasons why I wanted to be a wrestler. His matches with RVD were just like game changers for me.
Incredible.
And I mean, I still think they stand the test of time too. If you go back and watch them, just the intensity and the accuracy. But anyway, so that was one of those moments where I was like, this is I'm doing it. Like I'm living this dream. And that was when I was like a full-time wrestler. Like this is it. I'm doing it. And it was like, man, I'm in the clouds right now. So anyway, we go to the hotel in Philly, and we spent the night there. And so the next day, we're starting to drive. I think we had about an hour more to drive. And he just starts asking questions like, what are you guys doing tonight? Or, what's going on with the match? And kind of laid out the scenario to him where, I'm like, okay, well, it's Matt and I. We had a debut match against each other, and it went really well. And then their two big heel tag team came out, and they squashed us at the end, and we brawled out. At the end of the night, we had a big brawl. So he basically starts going full agent. He's like, all right, here's what you need to do, and he starts really going into the specifics about the match. He's like, you're going to take heat on you. Hot tag to Matt. Matt comes in. He's going to do the thing, and it was like the perfect story, And I'm like, this is amazing, It's like to have this ECW legend, like basically agenting our match, and so we're getting close to the arena, and he was just like, he's like, all right, he's like, we got to go get something to eat, and this is still like early on in my career. It's like the idea of eating before a match is just no possible way. Like I would crap everywhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you need fuel. He's like, you can't do this without fuel. Like, you're going to eat, So he, like, basically sat me down and spoon-fed me like a baby. He's like, you're going to eat, So
Love
he made
it.
me eat. And thankfully, I did not crap my pants. But so, we did that, and we had a connection. And, like, every time I saw him after that, he was so cool and just, like, wanted to talk. And then we were lucky enough to spend some time in XPW together, So he was there. So it was, like, more time in the ring. And he would run little clinics beforehand sometimes with Tracy Smothers where they basically would go back to wrestling school with us, and it was great, because I was still green as could be then. And I guess the other thing was we did a feud up in UWA Hardcore, And it was like a good 6 to 7 months. Great build, good stories. I was winning cheap, and I had this little faction that would help me out, and they're all like these rejects, So it was good. And we had one match, man, where I think it was escalating, so we had 2 or 3 traditional, and I think we had street fight after that. And I was having a street fight with Jerry Lynn, and he puts me on a table. He goes up this legit pretty high scaffold. I'd say 8, maybe 10 feet. Legit, not wrestling, 8 to 10 feet.
Sure.
8 to 10 feet. And he dropped an elbow from this thing, and he was 40. I think he was 44 at that point. So he's like my age now. And I was like, man, like looking back, I'm like, I knew it was crazy then, but now that I'm 44 and I feel what my hip and back feel like, he's nuts. So anyway, he hits me with his elbow. I don't know. I got the video clip somewhere, but I don't know how it happens. The half of the table that breaks kind of stands straight up, and I'm still going back as it's standing straight up, and I hit my brainstem across the back of that table with such force. I really thought that I probably cracked like the back of my skull, but in the agony that I was feeling, Jerry Lynn's laying next to me, and the crowd, the whole crowd, and this is that UWA crowd, which I said was already like that ECW mentality. They start chanting ECW at the top of their lungs. And I was like, I felt like Superman. I was like, I don't even care if my skull's cracked. Right? I was so jazzed up,
Yeah.
But I guess, what I would, again, back to your original question, what did you learn besides you need fuel, how to structure a good tag match? I'd say also building a feud, making it make sense, starting small and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we actually blew it off in a cage match. And I took the cradle pile driver while we were both standing on top of a table.
Holy shit.
Through the table. And same feeling, though, as I was laying there after he dropped that elbow on me. I'm like, Jerry Lynn just cradle pile drive me in a steel cage through a table, and they're chanting ECW,
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those storylines where I had control of the company, and if Jerry won, the brothers, UWA brothers, took back control, so there was something behind it, and they afterwards, all the baby faces came out with champagne, and they're on the top of the cage spraying champagne, and I'm just laying there, selling like I died.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is just, again, I'm living it, I'm in it, and it's so cool, and it's like, it's better than you thought, because like as a kid, you think about what's it going to feel like if I was actually in that ring, and it's like, this is better.
Yeah.
Like the adrenaline and the satisfaction of doing it, and knowing that you're also healthy after taking a pile driver to a table. I'm like, I got all my faculties. Like, I'm not hurt. I'm going partying after this. Like,
there's something about that last spot of the match when the pinfall or the submission's going down, and this is it, and you're unscathed for the most part.
Fantastic feeling.
Best feeling in the world.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And it's like, man, now I can I'm thinking like, okay, now I can text my wife like I'm okay. Like that's after every match, it's like I'm okay. And if she doesn't hear something, she's like, oh, he's going to get stitches or something. But yeah, it is a wonderful. That's it's again, it's easy to talk about because you've lived it. But for people that don't, like every match feels like calculated risk. And it's like, man, like I really could significantly get hurt badly, permanently.
Yeah.
And it's always that sense of satisfaction, but you're out doing it again next weekend or the next day.
Well, it's interesting you say calculated risks because obviously, there is, the margin for error is very, very small. I don't know about you, but like I like to think in real life, I'm a pretty rational guy. And there are certain scenarios that you could throw at me where in real life where I'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But you put in the scenario that now involves a ring.
Yeah.
And if it makes sense for the story, I'm just going to do it. Like, dude, I don't know if you saw, if you would have told me this in my 20s that I'd be doing this, in last month, I did a death match in Chicago. And so Ricky Shane Page is supposed to be in it. And Atticus Cogar is supposed to be in it, but Ricky Shane Page pulls out. So now this 8-person tag match, death match with the 2 main death match guys. The death match guys are now gone. Oh, nice. So now we have to create smoke and mirrors and create the illusion that we're doing a death match, which I was going to basically hide originally. Yeah. But now it was like, okay, what's the psychology here? How do we make this work? Well, first of all, because it's like a whole show of death matches, I was like, can we be number 1? Because I didn't want them to see anything else because we were going to build a story. But then the finish of the match, which I don't expect going into, is they have one pane of glass, and we try to figure out what's the best case scenario for this pane of glass. So long story short, they pitch an idea where me and my two partners, my brother Zach and Otis Koger, they said we're going to take the guy. It's going to be a pane of glass on a door, and they'll do like a shield double power bomb, and I'll come with like a neck breaker. And I was like, I feel like maybe like the back of my neck and stuff is going to land in the glass, and I don't know if I like that. So somehow I come up with a potentially worse idea, and I'm like, what if you guys pick them up and you do it like glass ride style, and I do a cross body? And they're like, what? We feel like that's worse. I'm like, I feel like we'll be fine. And I was just very concerned about taking care of the kid. So I made sure not to overshoot, and he was close enough to where I could just basically jump and palm him. But as we're going, I'm not thinking, my foot clips Otis's shoulder. And so instead of going cross body, I kind of go head first through this glass, okay? And for the most part, I'm already bleeding.
Yeah.
I'm unscathed, except for when I pop up, there's a little bit more blood than there was before because I could just feel that warmth coming over me. But it's the finish of the match.
Yeah.
And had you told me 10 years ago as a wrestler, would I do that? I'm like, no, that's stupid.
Yeah.
If you told me in real life, like jump through this pane of glass, I'd go, no, I'm good on that.
Yeah.
But in this scenario, it was like the culmination
I'll
of
give you $200.
well, it's like the culmination of the story. Definitely,
no
matter
story matters more than the money.
no matter what the money is, you got to make sure, because now I had something to prove. Again, it's that the remnants of that chip. It's like people had asked for refunds because Ricky had pulled out of the match, and in my brain, I'm like, I'm going to make those people regret asking for a refund. And when it was all said and done, the guy, me, who usually in this group was the bitch boy, portrayed as a bitch boy, I stepped up, and I'm like the bloodiest guy in the match. And now I'll show you after, I have a gash in my head that's healing from the glass hitting me in the face and everything. But I don't know. We do some crazy stuff for the sake of this weird art.
Yeah.
You mentioned Jerry Lynn. Something I was thinking about that I don't get to hear too many stories about this individual from people that I know. I've always thought he was extremely underrated, and I feel like as time passes, sadly, we're forgetting more and more about how incredible Chris Candido was.
Oh, God,
and you got to work with him. You got to share locker rooms with him.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Chris.
Oh, man. So, again, I watched some Memphis wrestling, obviously ECW, with the triple threat. So, I mean, for me, he was on a pedestal. All those ECW guys were, it's like when they would be on a show with me, or no, let's rephrase that. When I would be on a show with them, walking in, it was like I was starstruck, I mean, these were my heroes, because I was that rabid 1997, 98 ECW fan that, like, I got into some fights in my high school because kids would be wearing NWO shirts and I'd have my ECW shirt. And they would call it like extremely crappy wrestling, and I was like, you might as well talk about my mom. Like, this is my this is my tribe. Yeah. So for me, those guys were, the absolute pinnacle of wrestling, which is hilarious in retrospect, now that I've met almost all of them that are alive. And many of them didn't live up to it. They always say don't meet your heroes, right? So unfortunately a lot of them didn't. But like I said, Smothers and Jerry Lynn exceeded it. Chris Hamrick exceeded it. But Candido is another one of those guys that was awesome. Him and Chris Chetty. So I was on a few shows with him. Did not get to work him initially on the first couple times I was on the same show. But eventually we crossed paths in XPW. And it was him and Chris Chetty versus myself and Matt M-Dog. And it was towards, I guess, the end of XPW, and attendance was down pretty significantly. So as far as the match goes, I mean, we didn't go too crazy. I think both Chetty and Candido were worried about getting paid. So I think some checks had been bouncing at that point, so I think there wasn't as much incentive to really work too hard, But we essentially did a match where a good majority of it was called in the ring, which was quite a fun thing to try, because there wasn't a great house, and it was like you're in there with two really incredible wrestlers, especially Candido. Had
you not done a lot of calling in the ring at that point?
So I think earlier on you plan more, and then as you get further in, obviously you can improv more. But outside of like, the heat usually would be a situation where you just kind of work with the crowd and feel it out and do that. You have your beginning, you have your end usually. But in this case, there was not a lot called at all. It was like going into it, it's like, well, it's going to be a match. Like I don't know what it's going to look like. But just right off the bat, like just the comedy stuff and like just his mannerisms and his like personality. And it's like, I go back and watch this match that like, like I said, really nothing was called. It just kind of went out there and like let Candido do his thing. And it was just, he's wildly entertaining. Just like everything about him is the way he moved, the way he talked, the way he walked, the way that he was willing to look foolish, which I love when heels like make a fool of themselves. Like, I think that's great. I hate when heels want to be cool. Like, I don't like that at all. Yeah. Like, Candido was great at just, like, making a fool of himself. And so, anyway, we had the match, and it was solid, and, they were pros. And I got the T-bone suplex Candido, and I have this really cool picture of me with a pretty good arch. That's before my hip was shot, where I'm T-boning Candido. And it's like one of those pictures where I'm like, this is pretty awesome. Like, I'm T-boning Candido in the ECW arena, Yeah. Like, and I was a big Taz guy. So, anyway... we wrestled a match, and this is when he was with Sunny, Tammy. I don't even know what she goes by right now, but
well, she's not going by much.
I heard it wasn't going too good. But anyway, I'm sorry that that's the case. But I think they weren't in a great place at that point, both of them. But we're at whatever I'm going to forget the name of it, the diner that all the ECW guys would go to after the shows. That was right by the arena. There's some, greasy spoon kind of place. Yep. So we go there, Matt and I, we're starving. It's 2 a.m. And here comes Candido, and he's still wearing his Terry Funk pants and his boots, his wrestling boots. And it's winter, and no jacket. It was like cut off XPW shirt. And he's just walking in like, the same way he walked around the ring, he walked into that diner with his boots and Terry Funk pants on, and just holding court, being hilarious, just like, just the funniest guy. I don't know if this will translate to a podcast story because you almost had to see it to really appreciate it. But we were doing a show at the Golden Dome in Pittsburgh, and it was actually one of the better draws we had for XPW. It was like, I think we had close to 2,000, and it was legit 2,000. It wasn't even like a free ticket 2,000. Yeah. And it was a beautiful venue. ECW ran November to Remember 97 there. And the crowd that we brought was not too far off from that crowd, which is a pay-per-view I went to in 97. And that was an awakening when I saw it live. I was like, this is it. Yeah. So anyway, we're at this show. Show does great ticket-wise. Every match, something wrong happens. Matt and I were in a 6-man tag. It was Matt and I, Hamrick and Smothers were Southern Comfort, and it was Danny Doring and Kristen York were like just a random ECW team. Okay. And so we have a crazy match plan. And Chris Hamrick, like, he's going to come up with the dumbest possible thing he can do. So
I love him. He's out of control, though.
Yeah, we had a million. I mean, top rope pile drivers and, like, double moonsaults everywhere. And anyway, early match, 3 or 4 things quickly happen. Me and Smothers spill to the outside. Matt and Hamrick at the same time try to do the Arabian butt bounce, Sabu thing, but to the outside. Yeah. Rope snaps. Top rope snaps. And it's not the rope, it's the eyelet. So you can't do anything about that. So we go the rest of the show with 2 ropes, bottom and middle. So there's no top rope. Yeah. So I'm like, you have your best crowd in what probably the history of XPW minus those California shows where like Grimes got thrown off that. Oh, yeah. Yep. So, that happens. I remember Angel took a ridiculous bump off the balcony and really broke his pelvis and something else. So it was just bad all around. And then afterwards, I think there was some people not getting what they were told they were going to get paid. And so the attitude was bad. And thankfully, Matt and I had kind of a little, I don't want to talk too much about it, but like a little side deal where we were getting paid and we didn't have to worry about our pay. So anyway, we're in the back. Morale is bad, Shane Douglas comes in and he goes on this like carnival promoter rant about how wrestling is taking off like wildfire in like Pakistan, and like we're inches away from a TV deal with Pakistan.
Okay.
And like me and Matt, 22, 23, are like, this is crazy. We're going to wrestle in Pakistan. I can't believe this.
Young and dumb.
And so I start looking at some of the veterans, and they're all just like, and I think Candido said something about he's going to be the Pakistani intercontinental lightweight, something champion.
Yeah.
And he gets up, he goes over to this walk-in freezer, opens it up. He's about to close the door, and then he pops his head out during this meeting and says, "If I can open this, don't let me." And he closes the freezer with himself in it. and just the way that he said it, and his body language and his facial expressions, when he half disappeared, and then at the last second his head popped out. "If I can open this, don't let me." And he closed
Jesus Christ.
And it was like in that moment where everybody was just so angry, it was like a great moment of brevity where it was just like, that was perfect timing.
Yeah.
Everybody was pissed and nobody got paid, and there was threats being made, and like it was really the right thing. It diffused it in a way.
Where does that rank as far as most absurd, I guess, promise that you've ever been told in wrestling?
Oh man. I think everybody, I'm trying to think of specific ones. I was going to be a millionaire because of the backyard stuff. Like,
sure. Yeah.
That was guaranteed. And I believed it because we were on Oprah Winfrey and all these other talk shows. And it's like, if I'm on Oprah and they're saying I'm about to be a millionaire, like, I'm believing them, like I'm arguing with Oprah back and forth on her TV show and I'm winning, and it's like, I believed it. I was 19, 20 years old. So that was a big one.
I didn't realize you were on Oprah.
Yeah. I was like 19 when we first started the backyard stuff.
I wasn't there a Jenny Jones thing too that never aired?
Yeah. The censors would not allow it. The Jenny Jones show, we were told to go crazy, and we did. And it turned out that it was too hot for TV for Jenny Jones. Like, we were just, like, every interview we'd break into a brawl, and brawl up and down the bleachers. And,
oh, my God.
And my brother was trying to pick fights with this, like, I'm pretty certain there were a gang that was sitting in the front row at the Jenny Jones show. He was like, and my brother was out of his mind.
Yeah.
So he was trying to start fights with them, and just us hijacking every other question that was being asked of anybody else on the panel. And essentially they tried to get us wound up in the back and like, you guys aren't crazy enough. You got to be crazy. You need to be crazy. And it was like, we're going to bring it, dude. Like, hit the lights, hit the music.
Yeah.
I'll give you crazy. I'm not giving you crazy in the back when there's no cameras running.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
What a
what's
waste
it
of time.
for? Yeah, I'm going to hurt myself back here.
Yeah.
Like, believe me, it'll be on. And it was. And it was, Jenny Jones was one of the craziest. And they actually showed this was back when the TV Guide was a thing, like the paper version. It was like, it was advertising the upcoming week, and it was like 3:30 p.m. Jenny Jones, like, backyard wrestlers out of control, and go to turn it on. And it's like some 8th grade girl is like, my dad is sleeping with this, It's like, what the heck,
Yeah.
And then I called our guys out in California who had set it up, and they're like, at the last minute, Jenny Jones said the censors wouldn't let it fly.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's wild.
For that time of day, like the violence and the yelling, and like it like wouldn't pass the censor.
And that's wild when you think about what type of stuff was on daytime television at the time, especially like just competing. Jerry Springer. Before him, Richard Bay was like doing crazy stuff. Like, people always talk about Springer, and I can't wait to watch the documentary that's coming out next week on Netflix about it. But like, Richard Bay. Like, I remember on his show they would get into fights and they would like ring a bell. So as a little kid, I'm like, why is this like wrestling but on a talk show?
Yeah, and I mean, we knew what would. I mean, that was before anything was viral, but we knew what would be like the clip that would be,
Was Oprah before or after Jenny Jones?
Before. Oprah was like, obviously higher class. Like, they actually flew my mom and dad to Chicago and put us up in a 5-star hotel and limo to and from, which was crazy as a 19-year-old.
Wow.
But yeah, that was like, basically she was scolding me about backyard wrestling, But Jenny Jones was supposed to be like, they wanted chaos, and we brought it.
So with the Oprah thing, though, do they prep you on that? And like, this is what's going to happen? Or?
So here's where I'm not sure who lied. I was told by our guys in California that were producing the backyard wrestling stuff that Oprah was doing a show on extreme sports. They said things like bungee jumping, skydiving, skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that sounds cool.
Yep.
So we show up, not discussed at all. They basically put us on the show. I mean, we're on the stage at this point. And first story was like some mom whose kid was playing a game called Chubby Bunny, where you stuff marshmallows in your mouth and you try to keep saying Chubby Bunny until the most person can have the most marshmallows in their mouth.
Okay. Some
kid choked to death, like this woman's son. So she's recounting this about her son choking to death. And then the next kid goes to a public bathroom at a beach, gets his throat slit. And then the next one, it's like mom's just crying and like basically warning people about the dangers that exist with everyday activities,
Right.
And then they show like anti-backyard wrestling vignette created by the WWE. And I mean, it's just the stupid stuff, and a lot of it wasn't even us. It was just like fat backyarders cutting themselves and stuff. And
yeah.
They show that, and Oprah like whips her head right at me, and she's like, "So Josh, that warning didn't mean anything to you, like don't try this at home." And I just tried to articulate, like, listen, like these are our friends. This is a stunt show, like you had Evander Holyfield on here last week, and you were praising him, but he's punching people, trying to render him unconscious. But like I'm a bad guy because I'm doing this kind of kooky wrestling with my friends. Like that seems kind of like a double standard, And a lot of the points that I made didn't make the final cut. It was kind of edited creatively where there would be questions asked and they would cut the B-roll of me like what?
Yeah.
So I guess in some ways that grew me up a little bit about media, like what it is, what they expect, what it could be. So, I mean, it kind of smarted me up in some ways. So I definitely learned a lot, from how it all went down. Like, I guess I'd get more things in writing and, like what's it going to be about? I need something, specific, like here's what the show's about. So like if it's not, I got a hard copy of you saying like, you're bringing me on to talk about this, but, so.
Yeah. Do you think there's misconceptions about backyard wrestling? Because I feel like maybe there's a right and a wrong way to do everything. But when you think about now in 2025, a lot of guys, a lot of their, I don't want to say fundamentals, but the foundation of their success came from the backyard. You can go back as far as, the Hardy Boys, you guys. I mean, go back to Mick Foley and the stuff off the roof and everything. So, like, what do you think is the positives that came out of backyard wrestling?
Well, I would say, one of the positives is it gives you a jump on characters and promos and, I guess we never really told a story with our backyard stuff. It was just how much crazy stuff could we pack into one match, But I think, definitely we were already developing our characters and our voice, when we cut promos. And so I guess in some ways, like, the nerves that often guys get during their first matches, in some ways, like, even though there really wasn't much of a crowd there, like I already had some of those nerves, So I think in some ways it like kind of gets you used to being in a 15 to 20 minute struggle where everything hurts. You're having to kind of keep going even sometimes when stuff really hurt, which was so stupid. I was thinking back to some of those backyard matches where something would happen and I would be in terrible pain. And this would be situations where there's nobody there. And it was like, you can't stop the match.
Sure.
Like, I'm going to keep going even though I think I separated my shoulder.
Oh, my God.
And it's like, all that's on there's a video camera. And it's like, we just keep going, and I never, like, it's, again, that's probably back to the mental illness. Like, I don't even break character. Like, I remember one backyard match, it was me and Matt, and this was right after the BW backyard wrestling people had called us and said, like, there was some competition and we need to kick their ass, so we need some extreme content, like, we give money to those who give blood. Like they basically called us on the phone and are like, we need you guys to go nuts. We need some new stuff. So like Matt and I are like, yes, sir. We're on it. So it's like within 2 hours of that phone conversation, we're setting up ladders and tables and chairs. And we're like, we need a cool beginning to this, So the beginning is like, I'm got my back up against the garage and I got my hockey mask on top of my head so you can see my face. And I cut this promo about us being the best backyard wrestling promotion in America. Like, we're not a bunch of fat kids bouncing on trampolines. This is real. We're athletes, blah, blah. And I'm cutting one of my promos that I've cut, 6 months ago. It's the same thing. And that's where I was kind of saying, like, I was finding my voice, even then. But anyway, so I pull my mask down after I have my go home line or whatever the promo was. And the camera zooms out and Matt is on top of the roof. And he makes that, he goes, and I turn around and he does like a cross body. And my roof in my parents' garage is high. And he hits on top of my right shoulder. And I swear I separated my shoulder on the very first thing of the entire backyard match. And we went on for like 15 minutes. I took a power bomb on a ladder that was laid flat on the ground, like no ring, no give, And, but there was never a single thought like, I'm going to stop. Like, I'm going to stop and I'm going to check to see if my shoulder is separated. But it's just like, you got to keep going. And I don't know how that was instilled in me before I had even stepped into a professional wrestling school or met a professional wrestler in my life. But
Yeah.
it's like, you gotta, what do you mean stop? That's not an option. Like you go.
I want to talk about JT Lightning and what you learned from him and maybe some misconceptions about JT.
Yeah.
But like, we jokingly talk sort of about like, having a screw loose and the trauma that might be a requirement to be a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
What do you think it is for you that made that screw loose where you were like, I think I want to try this? Or did you not quite understand what you might be going into? Because like to kind of preface it with me, it's like, I don't know. Obviously I had like a weird childhood in general with my parents, but also in learning and getting more engrossed in wrestling, when I stepped into the school with JT, I had already read so many autobiographies where I knew that, or I had a feeling that at some point I'm going to get tested and maybe beat up for real.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. And I was paying money and just waiting for the moment where a grown man or multiple grown men were going to beat me up for real. And then it was up to me whether or not I was going to come back after that. So so where does the screw go loose for you?
So it was not I guess I would say there was not a single incident. It was a collection of incidents from my childhood that definitely, I don't know, they scar you and also at the same time shape you into who you are. So, for example, like I have 3 younger brothers. All 3 of them at a young age had to have reconstructive skull surgery where they would have to cut them from ear to ear, peel their face down, and reconstruct their skull. So when they would come home from the hospital, if Frankenstein would be a compliment, like eyes swelled shut, their entire face black, like ears swollen, like scar here to like stitches ear to ear. So I remember at a young age, like seeing my brothers come home like that, like, and I was probably 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, when the 3 surgeries happened, like that was messy. And then I lived in a place where we lived in a floodplain, so I say at least once or twice a year I'd get torn out of bed and thrown into a rowboat, and they're like, the house is flooding, we got to go. And it'd be like January, and you'd be like George Washington crossing the Delaware, Yeah. And I don't know, I lived in a crazy neighborhood too. Like people were getting shot occasionally, and it wasn't even like a violent neighborhood. It was just like spousal stuff, and next door neighbor got shot by a wife or something crazy.
Oh my God.
Anyway, and then the one I think that really significantly, I don't know if it was, I guess in retrospect it was probably a good thing. My cousin, who was my best friend, when I was 13. Story is, his parents, my aunt and uncle, were buying our house in Valley View. We were going to move out and move to Brecksville. And we were having a big picnic the last day that we were there, and they were officially moving in. And our neighbor's exotic bird got loose. It was like one of those $500, probably speaks English kind of birds. Anyway, it wasn't flying away, but it was just staying in the trees around the house. It was like flying from tree to tree. So it became like this neighborhood game where we were all trying to catch this bird. And so we all grabbed our fishing nets and ladders, and we're all like running around the neighborhood trying to catch this really expensive bird. Anyway, my cousin, who was bigger and stronger than me and a little older, was, with me at that time because we were like, pretty thick. And one of our neighbors had a really significant ladder. I don't know if it was like 15 feet or it was something like one of those double extend ladder kind of things. So the bird's up in this really high tree. He decides to put the ladder next to it, and he says, could one of you guys hold it, talking to my cousin and I. And my cousin, because he was older and bigger and stronger, like he held the ladder. So I'm standing right next to him, and my neighbor goes up to the top of the ladder, and he has a fishing net, and he takes a swipe at this bird and misses, but below the tree line there were some hidden power lines, and the thin ones at the top, I didn't know this, they have like no insulation, and they actually have the highest juice, the ones at the very, very top. Anyway, so the electricity went into my neighbor, went into the ladder, went into my cousin, and I started seeing smoke come out of the ground first, which didn't make any sense. I was like, why is the ground smoking? And then I looked, my cousin was shaking, and the circuit broke. And when it did, I don't know how, I don't understand the science of it, but it shot the neighbor who was on top of the ladder off probably 10 feet. I mean, it was like he got thrown, and he landed like a pencil, like head first from about 15 feet up, like right at my feet. And my cousin crumpled, and I hopped on him, and his eyes were like yellow. So I was like, oh no, you know. So I ran to call 911. So I made the call. My uncle, that was his son, like he couldn't do it. He couldn't even function. So I'm like calling 911 and telling what happened. And there was just like so much screaming, like everybody's screaming. Like I walked over to the other parking lot right next to our house because I just couldn't be by it. And I was counting minutes, like I was counting because I'm like, I know it's 5 minutes. Like, and if you're not breathing after 5, you're done, you know? So I'm like 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. I remember it was 11 minutes and I was like, oh man, he's dead. And yeah, so I mean, like to be 13 years old, you know, to see that and smell that, you know, I think that definitely gave me PTSD for a while. And I think that, you know, significantly impacted me. But it also, you know, here was, I guess, the silver lining was like, life is so short, you know, like take chances, you know, like don't go for the safe bet necessarily. Like, why not? You know, so I think like, you know, seeing him cut, so, you know, his life cut so short and him never getting a chance to be an adult or be married or have kids or, you know, get a, you know, a girlfriend, you know, like stuff like that. So I think that played, you know, a significant role in my development and grew me up fast, you know, like that kind of stuff. So I think that was huge. And I, as I was talking through this, I thought one more thing, and now this is turning into a counseling session. So I apologize.
No, this is great. Listen, I love having this conversation. I'm learning so much. Geez, that I had no idea about.
Yeah. So I think the other thing is, I've always struggled with, I don't know if it's like generalized anxiety disorder or like social anxiety. Like I have that. And this is going to make no sense whatsoever, probably only to people that probably have a similar situation. If I have to make small talk with a group of my daughters, like friends, parents, like I tell my wife, I feel like I'm standing there butt naked on fire. Like that's about how I feel in that situation, you know? But if I'm a character, if I'm Josh Prohibition as a wrestler, or if I'm Coach P as a baseball coach, or if I'm Mr. Pescura as a government teacher, I have a defined role. And I know this sounds so crazy, but I don't even feel like it's really me. I'm playing a part. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but like it allows me to say things and to do things and act in a way that I could not do comfortably as Josh Pescura. Like I can't do that. So I think for me, like Josh Prohibition was like, in some ways, what I wanted to be and what I wanted to say, and you can get away with it without getting into a real fight or going to jail, you know, so you can almost let out things that are in there that, you know, in civilized society you never actually do or say or be, you know. And it was like, in a way I was saying that was like so cathartic to be able to, you know, to say those things. Cause like, you know, I see some of those guys that are like, you know, the life of the party and dominate conversations, and like I really don't like this guy, you know, like he's so comfortable in his own skin. Like I'm almost mad that he's like that, you know, like I wish I could be that. But like when I'm Josh Prohibition, you put a microphone in my hand and I can talk trash to 750 people that are, you know, in the palm of my hand. Like, you know, now I have that power. So I don't know. There's my mental illness. That's what I struggle with.
That was the interview with Josh Prohibition, part 1 of 2. And what did I tell you? What an emotional way to end this first part of the interview. Look, somehow I didn't know that he was on Oprah. Somehow I had no freaking clue that he went through such a traumatic event in his backyard with a member of his own family, and so young. You know, I went through some shit in my life, and it molds you, it shapes you, it changes you. And, you know, we are a product of what we go through and how we react to it. And I'd like to think that all things considered, Josh Prohibition, he reacted in a way that has been beneficial for his life. And I don't know, just the person that he is, it's been beneficial to anybody who's ever met him. And I can't say enough good things about him. He's such a good person, a good man, and I'm proud to have him in my life. If it wasn't for Josh, I've said it so many times on the show, I would not be doing this podcast. I would not be a wrestler. I was on the verge of blackballing myself forever and ever. And Josh was the one that pulled me aside and said, hey, dumbass, stop it. I don't want anything to do with you. If you're going to act this way, I promised that I was going to change his ways. Not change his ways, change my ways. And in doing so, I shut my mouth. I began to earn Josh's respect. And, you know, he wasn't just my trainer. He became my friend. He would take me on road trips. He would take me to the gym. He would feed me. And as a young kid in this business trying to navigate things, you can't ask for anything better, especially considering his experience, who he's been in the ring with, just the stories that he would share, the advice he would give. I'm a very fortunate guy. And I'm glad that not only did I get to hear these stories, but both on and off air, I got to tell Josh what I think of him and how I feel about him, because I feel like far too often we pay tribute and honor people once they're gone. And we've talked about that on this show because we've done way too many tribute shows for people in the course of the last 5 years. And so to be able to tell him how much he means to me and how much he means to those around him, it's pretty cool. And listen, I can ramble all day, but I got to go. I got stuff to do. I got to prepare for my surgery. If I'm dead, this might be the last episode. I'm being overly dramatic. I don't think I'm going to unalive myself or be unalived by the surgeons, but who knows? Maybe the dude has shaky hands come tomorrow morning and something goes awry and poof, I'm gone. It's been a good run, I guess. You know, I had a moment or two, but whatever. Everything will be fine. Life will carry on for others, maybe not me, but hey, it was good to be here. Thanks for tuning in, and come back next week for part 2. I will inform someone if I pass away that they need to upload this episode so that you can hear it, because it'll be a treat for your ears. I can't leave you hanging without giving you part 2 of the interview with Josh Prohibition. So come back again next week, and we'll be having a buttload of bonus content over on patreon.com/ironandwrestling. Best way to support the show. But also you can support us just by subscribing on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, wherever you download podcasts, and leave a 5-star review. It helps create visibility for the podcast. We thank you very much for that. Follow us on social media at Iron and Wrestling. Follow me on social media. I'm at Gregory Iron on X, but I'm barely there. I'm on Instagram at Gregory_Iron. Facebook.com/TheHandicappedHero. Have I mentioned that I follow you back on these platforms, particularly Instagram, and I'll do it on X as long as you're subscribing to the Patreon. I will follow you back. I'll message you more than I do my loved ones, and you will become a loved one, the preferred loved one, because, well, you're investing money in me. So I'm going to give it right back to you, the love and the support, and your money allows me to eat food, and I appreciate that very much. If you'd like to book me on social media for pro wrestling podcasts, seminars, motivational speaking engagements, you can do that in the DMs. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Let's work something out. ProWrestlingTees.com/Gregory Iron for my t-shirts, Aaron t-shirts, Iron and Wrestling t-shirts. And, of course, you can get a shout-out from me on Cameo. Just search Gregory Iron, and I'll talk about whatever you want within reason, okay? Because I think at some point someone might have said something about a stink face, and now the AI bio on Cameo thinks that my finishing move is a stink face. That is not true. AI is terrifying. But I am not, and I am not terrified of you. And thank you for tuning in this week, and I'll see you again next week, as long as I'm still alive. Until then, here is our dramatic, succulent, last kiss goodbye. Mm.